The associate looked at your watch for exactly 4 seconds before she decided you couldn't afford anything in the store. She was wrong by about $9.4 million. That is the first thing you learn about being quietly rich. The room never asks. The room just guesses. And the room is almost always wrong. You are standing inside a private atelier on Oak Street, the kind of store that does not put prices on anything, because prices are considered vulgar here, a detail that always makes you smile because you are the only person in the building who has never once needed to ask. You are wearing a gray Oxford shirt you bought 7 years ago for $68, sleeves rolled twice, no logo anywhere on your body except the small enamel pin on your collar that nobody in this store will ever recognize, because it is not a brand, it is a stock ticker. The first company you ever bought shares in, back when a share cost less than your lunch. Your shoes are suede, scuffed at the toe in the particular way that only comes from walking, not from being driven. Your watch is a 31-year-old field watch that keeps time within 2 seconds a week and costs you $340 at an estate sale in a town whose name you no longer remember. This is the first sign of how these rooms treat quiet money. They do not see it. They are trained to see spend, not worth. A woman near the register glances at your sleeves, your collar, the crease in your trousers, and files you instantly under browsing, not buying. She does not greet you. She offers the specific kind of silence that luxury retail teaches its newest hires. The silence that is polite enough to avoid a complaint and cold enough to make its message clear. You do not mind. You have felt this silence in 11 different stores across 4 different cities over the last 19 years, and every single time it has told you more about the room than it has ever told you about yourself. You walk the floor slowly, looking at a leather duffel the way you look at anything well-made. Thumb along the seam, checking that the hardware is solid brass rather than plated, because plated hardware greens over time and solid hardware does not. You have owned 3 bags in your life. This would be the 4th. You do not need a 4th. You simply like good things and stopped feeling guilty about that years ago. This is the second sign. The room studies your body before it studies your bank account, because your body is the only data it has. Unstyled haircut, 6 weeks overdue, canvas tote from business school, ink stain still on the zipper. None of it says money. All of it says money, if you know what you're actually looking at. Then the door opens and the temperature of the store changes in under 3 seconds. A man walks in wearing a jacket with stitching that announces itself and a watch so reflective it throws light across the ceiling. A woman beside him in heels that click with purpose against the marble. His name, you learn in a moment, is Grant. Hers is Paloma. 2 associates appear from nowhere. A third brings a tray of sparkling water like a small ceremony. Grant mentions almost too loudly that he just closed on a property in the hills, that he has 14 minutes before his driver returns. The store rearranges itself around those 14 minutes as if they were the most valuable currency spoken aloud in this building. This is the third sign. The room does not reward wealth, it rewards the announcement of wealth. Grant's eyes check the associate's face after every sentence for a reaction. Paloma's handbag still has the plastic protector on the bottom corners, the unmistakable sign of something bought this week rather than lived with for years. None of that matters to the room. The room does not investigate. It responds to signal, and Grant is broadcasting on every frequency he owns. You continue looking at the duffel. Nobody rushes you because nobody expects anything from you, and there is a kind of freedom in being invisible that people who need to be seen never understand until, if they are lucky, they stop needing it. Grant and Paloma are shown to a private seating area near the back, the one with the good light and the espresso machine reserved for people the staff believes are worth the ceremony. You watch this with no resentment at all because resentment is expensive and you gave it up around the same time you gave up carrying credit card balances. Here is the 4th sign, the quiet one nobody clocks in real time. The associate ignoring you right now is the same associate who, in about 6 minutes, will personally walk your purchase to the register and apologize with visible discomfort for not recognizing you sooner. This flip happens every time, in every store, because it is never really about you. It is about the moment the room finally receives the one piece of information it was never trained to look for on its own. That moment arrives. You bring the duffel to the counter with a card case in chestnut leather and ask, in the same unhurried tone you have used for 2 decades, to have both delivered to the address on file, billed to the account under your name, the one that has existed in this store's system since before this associate had the job. Her expression changes, almost imperceptibly. Her eyes move to the screen, then to your collar pin, which means nothing to her and means to you 17 years of small monthly deposits nobody congratulated you for making. The account on screen does not look like a browsing account. It looks like a client who has quietly spent more here over a decade than Grant will spend in his entire life. Driver and 14 minutes included. This is the 5th sign, and it is the one that finally answers the question the entire morning has been circling. Quiet wealth does not need the chair. It does not need the sparkling water. It does not need 14 minutes to be treated like they matter. Because quiet wealth has already made peace with being irrelevant to a room until the exact moment the room needs it to be relevant, and not 1 second before. You take your bags. You thank the younger associate by the name on her badge, because you always do. Because kindness costs nothing, and you have never once believed that money excuses a person from basic decency. You step back out onto Oak Street into ordinary afternoon light, past a bus stop, past a man selling roasted chestnuts from a cart that has been on this corner since before you had your first job, and you think, not for the first time, about how strange it is that the loudest people in any room of money are so often the ones with the least distance between their last paycheck and their next unpaid bill. You walk 9 blocks home because you like walking, and because a car would only get you there 4 minutes faster, and 4 minutes has never once been worth what a car costs you in yearly depreciation. Your apartment is on the 6th floor of a building with no doorman because you have never needed one, and the elevator is slow in the particular way that old elevators are slow, groaning up through decades of other people's ordinary lives. You let yourself in. Nothing about the apartment would surprise a stranger. A single shelf of paperbacks, most of them read twice. A desk with 2 monitors, one of them slightly older than the other because you replace things when they break, not when they age out of fashion. A framed photograph of your parents outside the 2-bedroom house you grew up in, the one with the leaning fence your father never quite got around to fixing. You sit down and open the account you have kept since you were 23 years old, back when the number in it was small enough to be genuinely embarrassing at a dinner table, back when $100 a month felt like a real sacrifice rather than a rounding error. You watch the number the way some people watch a fireplace, not for excitement, just for the quiet company of something steady. 22 years of the same habit. Buy a little. Wait. Buy a little more. Ignore the headlines that promise the sky is falling. Ignore the headlines that promise the sky has never been higher. Just keep buying, the way a river keeps moving, without asking anyone's permission, and without needing anyone's applause. You think about Grant and Paloma, not with judgment, but with the tired affection you feel for people running a race you used to run yourself. You remember exactly what it felt like at 26 to want the chair, the water, the 14 minutes of a room bending itself around your name. You remember how good it felt for about a day and how empty it felt every day after, the way any purchase feels when its whole purpose was to be witnessed by strangers who forget you within the hour. Most people learn what you learned far later than they wish they had, usually around the same time the bills for last year's performance come due with this year's interest attached. Here's the 6th sign, the one you have carried the longest, the one the store will never teach because its entire business depends on nobody learning it. The chair is not proof of wealth. The water is not proof of wealth. The 14 minutes are not proof of wealth. The proof is a number on a private screen that nobody claps for. that grows in a silence so complete most people mistake it for nothing happening, when it is the only thing that was ever actually happening. Evening comes without ceremony. You make dinner on the same stove you have used for 11 years, older than most of what Grant probably just financed. You eat at the desk because the table is for weekends, and check the account once more before bed. Not because it changed in 4 hours, but because the ritual matters more than the number does. Then you set the same alarm you always set and get into a bed that has nothing to prove to anyone, wearing a watch that has never once impressed a stranger and has never once needed to. Tomorrow, the store will forget which associate ignored a man in a $68 shirt. The associate will not forget quite so quickly. And you, walking home through the same 9 blocks you always walk, past the same chestnut cart, past the same bus stop, will keep doing exactly what you have always done. Buying quietly, building quietly, sleeping soundly, invisible to a room that was never built to see you coming, and was always, from the very first 4 seconds, wrong about exactly who you were.